Super rain. Welcome back, everyone. Okay, so what I've done so far, which I didn't record any of it, was, and it doesn't really matter, I finished the starter wiring. I hooked up the neutral safety switch, which I did record a little bit of. Everything. Hello, PD man.
A few minutes later.
Anyway, welcome back. We got some more stuff. Stabbard is working on a boat, and they're storing a bunch of their stuff here. Anyway, new transformer boxes and whatever. Anyway, so I got the neutral safety switch soldered, and the reverse lights work, and then neutral don't start work. I went to the garage to look for a bunch of intercooler clamps, and I only had one, which is fine. And then I just put a hose clamp. Whatever, I'll order some. It's not like it's gonna see a bunch of manifold pressure, so anytime soon. I'm gonna click the dash back together, put the last few screws in it, and for the most part it's done. I still haven't figured out, I figured out the 8.8 box. I got the firmware from EFI Source. Hands down, one of the best places to buy stuff. The customer service and tech support's great. I tried to figure it out on my own. Couldn't find the information I needed. Hit them up, and within an hour, he already emailed me a new config file, loaded it, no problem, everything works. The only thing I'm having a hard time doing, and I'm not sure if I can even do, I gotta contact him again and ask him, is if through CAN bus I can take that data from the 8 analog inputs and send it to my generic sensor file and change the high-low, you know, X amount of voltage means this amount of manifold pressure, blah, blah, blah. So, but that doesn't need to be, I can just do that stuff later in the computer, and it's not that big of a deal. I gotta click the bumper on, put the grill on. I got all these spare parts over here. We're gonna try to sell some of it. I saved the trim pieces just until it was done in case I broke one, because, you know, that would be how it would go. I'd sell that and then I'd snap one. The radiator condenser, the AC compressor, and a bunch of that little stuff I'll keep. Some of the stuff I'll throw away, like the fuse panel. No one's gonna want that. Most of this dash, no one's gonna want. This motor is like a weird gear connector, so most of this stuff here is garbage. But all in all, I think it's about done. So most of this mess is cleaned up. I gotta get rid of the garbage, pick up the last little bit of stuff, but maybe figure out somewhere to put some of these sensors and maybe tape them in the good position, you know. I will get a washer fluid tank and then a coolant reservoir, and then those will be functioning at some point, but not right now. Oh, the one thing I do need to do is wire the boost controller. That's something I forgot about. But everything else besides that is kind of good to go. I'm thinking as I'm looking at it, has heat. Seats are heated and working. All the wiring in the back is done. The other thing I do need to figure out is this push-pull kill switch. I gotta drill a hole in here and then modify, because I added all the carpet and sound deadening. This lever is too big to actuate it, so I need to cut that off and then drill a hole and slot it and basically move this mechanism down. But I'm not sure if it's gonna work. It might take a lot more leverage to do. So, but I don't need that to drive the car home and do whatever. So, yep, that's that.
seconds. The next morning.
That's a lot of tire. And that's stock. The boost controller's not hooked up, so that's like 3 pounds, 5 pounds, something like that. Alright, welcome back. So you'd think we'd be done and just driving this thing every day, but I'm still having so many problems with that EFI 8x8 box. EFI source 8x8 expander box. Input expander, yeah. Anyway. Like tons of tuning problems. I just can't get the damn thing to work right, and I don't know why. I don't know if it's because I'm using a Mac. I can't load firmware. It doesn't recognize the module. All my CAN bus settings, nothing's making a difference and working. So screw it, I'm taking it out. So whatever, I'll just use my micro squirt to log analog inputs, which means I won't be able to use the EGTs anymore. Kind of sucks, but whatever. I mean, how many people out there, stock cars aren't driving with EGTs. Most things don't have an EGT on them. I mean, like my diesel truck has a single EGT for all 8 cylinders. Whatever. So I'm going to take that thing out and figure out a place to mount the little micro squirt in here, and then take the EGT stuff out, and then wire these to some of the analog inputs and use my micros and IO box. I depinned most of the stuff out of it, except the analog things. I can always put the pins back in for the stuff that's like a switched input or switched output if I ever add stuff. So that's kind of where we're at now. All right, so the 8.8 box I took out and I put my micro squirt in there, and now I'm loading the firmware after messing around. I had to get my girlfriend's laptop because it was an old enough version of Mac OS where I could load a serial driver on it, because the new Montgomery, I think is the name of the operating system on Macs, it just doesn't work for all these serial things. So her computer did, so I had to download Tuner Studio and download all the firmware, and now I'm uploading the firmware. And I finally finished. So hopefully I can shut the car off, undo my bootload wire, plug in the 3 Pro again, because I was scared that I was getting that feedback that was causing some little errors. Okay, let's slide her laptop out of the way. Let's grab mine. I hate this Mac. I shouldn't say I hate the Mac, but I really hate the Mac for doing car stuff because it doesn't seem to work as well, or kind of like it was supposed to. It's a configuration automatic. So after I did a little more investigation, I figured out I repinned the connector wrong. That analog connector I put together, all the pins were backwards, so that's why all my data was getting skewed. Even though it was still having problems with that 8.8 box, that's kind of part of the reason that I couldn't get any accurate data out of it. So after 2 days of messing around with it, I finally figured all that out. And then here in the next clip, you'll see I got trans temp and oil temp that's accurate, and the line pressure still says 0, but it darts up when you put it in drive. In park, there's no line pressure. Alright, I'm not sure if I filmed any outros for this thing, but so after like 2 weeks of messing around with one computer after another, I finally got it dialed in, and I realized some of it was all of it was my errors. Yeah, all of this was my errors. It is what it is. But I did finally get the boost controller tapped in. I'm not using a factory fuel pump, so I just used the fuel pump feed. So when the PCM sees the engine running, leaves the fuel pump running, and then I'll have a boost controller. so I can't really test it, but whatever. So what I did mess up, what part of the problems were, and I pinned out my analog output connector wrong. Things were plugged in the wrong spots, so that's why the data was so skewed. But in the confusion of me trying to figure out why the data was so skewed, I obviously messed something up. So the firmware in the 8x8 input box from EFI source just stopped working, it stopped communicating with me. I have a Mac, so I just don't know how to use that thing in the manner to make it useful for me. Like, I don't know how to kind of find the back way into stuff and then load firmware. I was able to finally figure out how to load firmware into my micro squirt, but Mac OS Marauder or whatever the newest thing is doesn't support any serial devices. So the serial converters I have, they don't have any firmware or drivers that support them. So I had to use my girlfriend's computer, which is like an old Mac, load hers with a program that will read the serial connector, download whatever I needed onto her computer. Her computer's so old the battery doesn't last, I could have it plug in and charge all the time. And then reflash the firmware on my micro squirt. Oh, I forgot the part where I gave up on the 8.8 box. I wasn't seeing eye to eye with whoever, the tech support I was working with, so whatever. I have a micro squirt lying around, so all I'm doing is using this thing to data log IO. The bad part is I now lose EGT. Whatever. So I reloaded the firmware onto the micro for an IO box instead of the 4L80, and then hooked up the CAN bus to my MS3 and then set up all the stuff, and all the data was still skewed, but I was getting data now. The 8x8 box, I wasn't getting any data, so that's some progress. So then I started tracing the CAN bus lines. CAN bus lines were right, wiring was right. So then I tried checking I pulled out my analog harness like we talked about, which was actually pretty handy. And then I started probing it, and I had all the pins wrong. So once I repinned that, all my data is right. You probably saw a video of it running where I showed the screen with all the data there. Oil temp, trans temp, fuel pressure, oil pressure, trans line pressure, crankcase pressure. I want to put a barrow in here so I can do a barrow adjust. Really, it doesn't matter, I don't leave this area that much, but if I were to go like over the pass or something heading east. But anyway, so the last thing that I'm going to do, and I'm probably going to just button the car up the way it is right now and drive it home, or drive it for the rest of the week, or drive it this week, is add this. So I got these little connectors, or these little switches, and I put this in here, and it kind of looks pretty factory. So that will be my high boost and then traction control, because I have front and rear wheel speed. Yeah, 2 computers later, 2 Macs later, I think I'm just going to try to find a little, maybe a cheap Windows 10 PC laptop thing that I can just use for car stuff, because Athen has HP tuners, which isn't supported on Mac from what my understanding, and I don't want to do the Windows parallel stuff. It just seems like a waste. But I have an old Raspberry Pi. Oops. I mean, I've never even booted this into a car. I plugged it in the other day just to make sure it works, but that thing doesn't really have kind of what I'm looking for. I don't know, I was thinking I could put that in the car somewhere, like in the glove box, and if I needed to, I could just pull the thing out and hook it up and do whatever I need to, but I probably am just not going to do that because it seems kind of silly. This is kind of the end of this stage, you know, the AC and the oil intake and stuff. I might even just leave it like this. Who knows, drive the windows down, but it's way more creature comfort setup. So like, subscribe, comment, go check out my Instagram, Big Theo Pacific 1. So yep, go check it out. Make sure you subscribe. Thank you. Bye.